Go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the YouTube Auto Builders first episode of the Fine Scale Live Build Series. Our goal is to showcase various techniques in wood and fine scale building constructions. And we're going to start with this BTS kit. We'll go into the details in a moment. We'll showcase numerous techniques. Each of us will do some different techniques. In a moment, we'll turn cameras down, and it'll be an all camera down showcase of our techniques, start to finish, through a series of episodes. Let me introduce you to our cast of characters tonight. We've got Miles with the beautiful model that he had up, and we've got Barry Rosier, and of course, thankfully, at his directorial debut, as long as we've got him until Hollywood steals him, we've got Johnny with us. So Johnny will get us started. We'll get doing some real work.
All right, thank you, Andy. Let me go back over here. All right, well, welcome everybody to the YouTube Model Builders presentation of the Fine Scale Build Show. This is a hands-on build, like Andy's been saying all along. I want to tell everybody to go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check schedule for the all the shows, the Tuesday shows, the Wednesday Arduino workshop, and the live show. Also, you can sign up for the e-magazine. That way you'll get notified when it comes out. We just had one come out about 3 weeks ago. JD and his team did a fantastic job again on that one about rust and dirt and grime. So be sure to go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com and check the schedules there. All your Tuesday shows and the Wednesday show are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. The Thursday and the Saturday live show are 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern. And now we'll turn it back over to Andy, and y'all have a good time.
Thank you, John.
All right, guys. So we have C&O standard section house. They make it in two different models. I've got one of each so I could look at the differences, although they're quite similar. The 27654 C&O standard section house and the C&O Quinnebot section house 27655 in HO scale. Miles is adding some diversity to us by building the O scale version. And as you'll see on screen, Miles's hero model, as he likes to call it. I love that description of that model. A completed kit. This is our goal, to get to that point in a series of approximately 3 shows. We'll see how we get there. Wood construction has some variety in the performance, the speed, etc., whereas plastic tends to be, or styrene kits tend to be, fairly predictable. Wood has some diversity in how quickly we can complete gluing, paint applications, etc. We'll do a series or a showcase of different techniques, with each of us varying as much as we can between a few different techniques. So let's take a look at the kit that we're building. So I have had to do a little bit of preemptive work on mine. I think most of us here have, because there's a few techniques that require a little time, but I will go back and show each of those, where I pre-stained the wood parts. I do stain front and back, and in just a moment I'll apply stain so I can show you what I'm using and how. I applied stain to all visible parts, minus the floor, which we'll do a different technique on once we get to that point. These kits from BTS, I'm really fond of them, especially for the buddy, which is, these are a great learning experience for stepping up to the multi-$100 craftsman kits. You can get some serious experience with these kits. BTS kits come with such details as doorknobs and trash cans and some of some white metal parts. I see the little bird on the roof of or on Miles's chimney. So they come with quite a few of those parts, and I'm really fond of the detail parts that come. That tends to be the difference in less expensive and more expensive parts. Some of these are glued to the bag, apparently. All right, we'll come back to that. So in the kit, a series of walls and a flooring system. There's a set of directions. I'm assuming that's what the paperwork is. I'm not going to do a lot of or read through much in the way of the directions, but a series of wood walls. What I do is a lot of people will will pre-put their supporting structures on the walls, and I'll show you shortly why I don't do that when I stay. There's a few reasons. This kit in particular has a unique thing that the battens are separate. They come in a strip like this that is separate battens on top. It has a self-adhesive on the back. Unfortunately, due to the one of the parts of the painting method that I've chose to use because it's a wet technique, I can't rely strictly on this, and I'll show you what we do when we get to that. But for mini paint techniques or strictly paint techniques, this is all you need to apply this stripping over top of your walls. For staining, I stayed front and back. That keeps the warping quite low. What I did last night is pre-stained these parts, front and back, and then stuck them under a little bit of weight. Just put a box on them, put a little weight on them so that, it doesn't require anything eccentric, but a little bit of weight on them so they'll basically hold into position. There's not a great deal of complexity obviously, to staining. There's a lot of choices. I use a lot of different things. I use India inks of various kinds. Really fond of these little ketchup mustard dispensers. They make it really handy. I use a lot of India ink and scenery applications as well. So I keep those handy for that. This is a black mix that I use for a lot of things. This is roughly a quart of a pint, I think it is, of alcohol to maybe 2 or 3 spoons of ink. I would recommend staying lighter and applying numerous coats to it. You have a lot better control. However, this product from Hunterline, I am an absolute convert to this for wood structure kits. From what I understand, and I have not done a chemical analysis on it or anything, not that I would, but is that it is essentially a shoe dye and an alcohol mixture. And it's not that you couldn't buy shoe dye and alcohol. That's been used for probably 60 or 70 years, their hobby. However, this fellow that does the Hunterline kits, and I got to speak to him at the NMRA convention. He's just a swell fellow. And he has probably upwards of 30 different colors, from blues and greens to some really good wood colors. This is driftwood. It's my absolute favorite color. I got a few of these, but my absolute favorite color for underpaint techniques. What visible area we have below the degraded paint, whether you use a fading effect or a wood peeling effect, this is an exceptional color, and the application is trivial, of course. So, we'll just get a coat of stain on some of these walls so that we can move on to the construction techniques. You don't want to saturate or soak this material in. You just need the color. I see that. Thank you. You just need to get the color applied. So you don't want to over wet it. That has a tendency to warp it worse than it would in the absence of getting it wet. So it takes you slightly longer to do that, but you want to get some color on, and then do the back side of it. And, just like I showed you here with these, and I'll come back and do this while some other people are modeling. I'll get the other one stained up as well. Also, there's a lot of differences in some of these wood kits from various manufacturers. These are tab and slot style configurations. So they have a tab and slot on the corner where wood has the tab and the receiving slot, and you can simply fit those components in. With this technique, this is how it's designed to be used. There's nothing wrong with this, and then you can back support it with some square stock. It's one of the things I mentioned in the recommended toolkit by Stripwood. Probably a 5/32 or so. I've got various sizes that I use for different parts of the technique, but this is a 5/32 material, and you can back support that. That's a quite common technique. I've used that numerous times to support these structures. You get an effect that is akin to this. It is tab and slot style construction with supporting bracing inside of it. And then it uses a trim strip to cover the outside edge. That's just fine. A lot of buildings, that does match the style of construction. However, there's another way to do this that I like. It's a slight modification. It's a modification that you often see on higher end structures and craftsman kits, and that is not using a tab and slot style construction, but instead cutting the tab and slot construction off and replacing the corner piece with a square stock. On this kit, since it's fairly small trim, I used a 16th inch square stock of material, and I braced it with a 5/32 on the inside, including trim. That's how I'm going to do this kit as well. I'm going to cut the tab and slot construction off. So not a great deal of complexity to it. And what we probably ought to do is take a look at how these apply, since the board and battens are going to control the sizes of our walls. I don't want to, totally kit bash the structure, but there's a few minor modifications that you can make that will add a lot to your structures, and it'll make the difference in a $20 or $30 wood kit to some of the quality that you get out of $100+ kits. So these overhang, and if you notice, the batten material hangs back from the corner some. So we'll want to cut a little bit more off from these walls to account for that, so that the batten length at the end of the wall aligns. So let's just get the board and batten material on. Now, as I'm going to do a paint technique that's become quite popular, been talked about quite a bit in our community by a modeler who defies laws of physics, in my opinion, by the name of Chuck Doan. He does a technique using mineral spirits and applies the paint over the wet mineral spirits, and then uses clear tape to peel that off. Since I'm going to do a wet technique, I don't trust the self-adhesive on its own. Now, I'm a big fan of Eileen's Tacky Glue. I'm thinking that Miles is the guy who turned me on to this, coincidentally, but this is exceptional stuff. It's essentially a white glue with a lot higher thickness and application. They also have it in a aerosol. So I'm going to spray an aerosol on the back of this to add to some of the adhesive. It also sets up quite quickly, so it's really good for our technique here. So I can get some of these applied, get the battens applied to get ready to do that. While I'm doing that, we could let a few other people get started on their techniques to kind of summarize how they want to get started. Sure. Anybody with Q&A would be a good time for that.
All righty. I'm assuming this guy's abbreviated his name. I'm just going to refer to him as MHB. He was asking, what is the best adhesive for bonding styrene to wood? Just another scale modeler told him gel CA. If any of y'all have a other method of adhering styrene to wood.
I wouldn't disagree with using gel CA. It may be the best technique, although I have to admit, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not a big CA fan when it comes to wood, because it depends on your application and what you're going to do with the structure, but it tends to get brittle over time. So for me, in my case, I like to go back and add lighting, or I plan to go back and add lighting to them and some of those effects, and I'm afraid of gel CA over the long term. Although I will use it. I'm going to use it in the construction of this kit as well. I also use contact cement quite a bit. I'm really fond of contact cement, and don't negate epoxy. That's a good technique too. And you can dilute epoxy and contact cement with acetone or MEK. MEK does a much better job, but acetone works. What about you fellas? What other suggestions do you have for that?
Well, I put in the tool list to get the 3M very high bond tape from our Hughes. I just put Hughes in there because of the fact that they supply it. But very high bond tape, and that stock number works for anybody. That's actually a 3M stock number. But that tape will bond anything to anything. They actually put semi-trailer trucks and airplanes together with that tape. That's why it's like $40 a roll. But you stick those parts together, and they are there to stay. I mean, they literally put truck sides together with this stuff. So if you want something to stick, that tape will certainly do it. I'm sorry about the price. It used to be $25, and it certainly has gone up. And I don't recommend that everybody just go run out and buy it. But I keep about 3 or 4 rolls back here of it, different sizes, just because I believe in it so much. But CA is also good. The epoxies, just like Andy was saying, are all good.
I agree. I've got that adhesive or this roll of this high bod double-sided tape up on screen. If you want to show that it's got a buy roll anyway, and I normally see it with red on it. I also use transfer tape, and I had some out here, but which is much thinner. Although this is quite thin material, but it is tough as nails. Just be wary of where you put it because it doesn't come off or clean up very good. It's strong, whether you want it to be or not.
Barry, I don't want to step on your toes. You want to add to it, or?
Well, I agree kind of with what you guys are saying there. You know, the gel CA sometimes can get brittle. I would probably go, like Andy said, and use a contact cement. You know, well, the other thing you got to consider is like the paint technique Andy's using. He's, going to douse it with mineral spirits and stuff. You have to figure out how does that affect your choice of adhesive on things.
Yes.
Like, okay. I don't know what that thing keeps going off for. Yeah, if you do the, like he's doing, you got to watch the glue. I'm using pretty much straight alcohol stains, so I could get away with almost any kind of glue that I wanted, for applying these pieces or other things. So I think either way, you can't go wrong with making sure you use the right glue. It's not so much I like this one or that one. What's the proper glue for your job?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with that. The painting technique probably has the single biggest controlling factor, other than what the base ingredients are. And while I'm a huge fan of multimedia kits, that's using wood and styrene and brass and all mixed together, and cardstock and paper. Whatever is the best technique is what I'm fond of. There is a complexity when it comes to adhesives when you're doing that. So,
yeah, I want to back up 1 second. I did a completely different technique. Up on my screen, I've got the Pantone marker. I used a 70%. This one is gray, warm, which means it has a slightly red tinge to it, but you can't hardly tell it. But if I go to this, I left one wall. Get my cameras to change. I left one wall unstained, so I just used the wide side. This is extremely fast, and Barry can tell you we did this just a couple of weeks ago at Amherst, and it's an extremely fast technique. The thing I really like about it, you can see in this piece, is it does not stain evenly, which is one thing you want. You don't want that stain to go on evenly. So the streaking to me just makes it appear to be more of a board appearance on this board, what's going to be a board and batten wall.
Exactly, yeah.
And you can wipe it a little more or less at the top. I don't know if you can tell it or not. You probably can't, but on the Hero, change over to it. I noticed this some 50 or more years ago at a place called Lattimore Barn. It's a barn in Dallas, which is long since collapsed. But nonetheless, if you look at it and if you drive around any part of the country, I don't care where you are, you'll see that the paint or stain, whatever it happens to be, up close underneath the eaves is less weathered. In other words, if it's a white building, it's going to have much more white paint up next to that eave than where it starts to peel as you get anywhere from 6 inches to a foot below that eave line. And actually on the Hero, I'll bring it over here after a little bit, I actually tried very hard once I got the stain on, which I'm doing here almost done. I tried very hard to come back at the top and stain it some more and give it a darker stain at the top to make it look like that eave was shadowing and shading, preventing the weathering from getting to that wall.
And another thing, Miles, you could do too is, especially if you're doing like a peeled paint effect, consider what direction the prevailing winds might be in your layout, and the side where the wind hits it more would have more weather, more weathering on it than the side that doesn't have the wind.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting pretty extreme, but then we're doing fine modeling, and contest modeling you might want to do. So, yeah, it's something you may want to consider. I did not add any adhesive to my battens, I just simply glued them on, but I have pre-stained all of those. On the insides of my walls, I've gone ahead and painted them white. I did not put an interior in the Hero one. I just put the shades on that were provided by BTS. But on this O-scale one, I wanted the option of being able to put an interior in it. So I've gone ahead and I've painted all of the interior pieces and all of the interior walls, the opposite sides here, with the white, so that it's ready to have an interior if I'm going to put it on. And I didn't think about cutting off the walls in the first place. I don't want to make that much work. So Andy's going to have to cut floor down, and he's going to have to do all kinds of stuff. I just soon build the kit and be done with it. So
yeah. Yeah, well, while we've been here, I've been going ahead and assembling my battens onto my wall so that I can go ahead, because I'm going to be using, like I said, almost all hunter line stains. Like Andy said, I'm a big fan of their stuff. So
that's one thing we should point out, is this wide board is at the bottom of the wall. Be sure you put that wide board on the bottom. As a matter of fact, you'll see here in a second, one of us does it. It actually overhangs the bottom, and you trim it off. So
yes, yeah, like on the battens here.
Yes.
You see how that overhangs the edges and all of them? That has to be trimmed off per the instruction. So yes, we do read instructions.
Yeah, I did. I read them for the HO one. Now I know I'm good. I don't have to read them anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad I read it, because I was trying to figure out how the heck am I going to put these battens on there.
Yeah, what's he doing with that big board at the bottom? I figured that was a foundation board when I started, but it's not. The other thing is to be sure and trial fit on these, because one side wall is different than the other side wall. So be sure you trial fit. On one of these side walls, the windows are very high at the top, and on the other, it's high at the top. The other, it's down much more. So be sure you get the right wall with the right batten. Confusion will cause more confusion down the line.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Well, I'm going to start with, on my base here, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the subflooring and everything which goes on to our foundation piece here. So I'll assemble this first, and then I'm going to go ahead and I got to paint the little concrete footers around the edge of this. So this is the interior wall piece I'm cutting here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I will cut all the pieces out, and then we're going to assemble this whole base. And this is the walls fit around the outside of this. So this forms a nice firm support for the building itself to keep the walls nice and square. So
one thing I did to make sure these battens didn't move around is flip it over upside down and put your pressure on the back side, and that way you're not actually pushing on these battens and forcing them to move. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought that's quite all right, Miles. That's a good point. I mean, I just take my X-Acto knife and look how sticky them suckers are.
Oh, they are. They'll stay forever.
And then just burnish the back of it, you know. I burnish the front side gently, but like Miles said, you want to put some pressure on to make, because it helps the adhesives to set. So let's go ahead and do it to the end walls as well. There we go. So they're all set now. So now I've got my floorboard out. So let me go ahead and cut out the bottom parts here for the sides of the floor. And one. I mean, these kits sometimes look a little intimidating to people, but if you've done a few of them, it's really not that difficult. So just like I used to be afraid of doing water effects until I took a class on it or saw someone show me how to do it. Now I feel totally comfortable with it. So just get out there and try things, folks.
Now, I did not, on my walls here, I did not have to do much weathering. But if you notice on the Hero one, it has some very uneven streaking. to both the wall and to the battens. And to do that, I had to work a little harder. So I'll bring it up here and show you. I took the classic sanding board. I really think these are fantastic. Any kind of really flat board, and spray glue or fasten down the best way possible. Wet glue, Eileen's and Elmer's are not the best ways. Spray glue is actually the best. But glue down in either 100 or 120 grit paper. And then I took those walls on the HO building with the side that was going to be outside that I wanted to weather, and I actually put them down and sanded them and made them much lighter than what they were when they originally stained. Now, I think here, you may be able to tell it, that these battens are a little bit different hue and not weathered as maybe as much as what the wall. So in this case, I'd actually come in and maybe give that batten just a little bit of a sanding. It roughs it up. You can see it leaves it a little bit lighter, like it was weathered. It would be more exposed anyway than the background boards. And not a bad look, and you can do it extremely fast with just some sandpaper. Get it wiped off so you can see what's going on. There you go. But that to me looks a little bit better. But if you don't have a sanding board, make one. I don't know how you can build a model without it. The other thing I do is I take the bottom of that, here where I trim these battens off, take that and just drag it across that sanding board and get them absolutely flat here so they won't catch later on anything else, so you don't get frustrated.
Yes, sir.
It's on.
Not for the show. Let's see here, Barry. We have a question here from CSX Rail Line Productions. Barry, I see that you have a yellow furniture type marker sitting there. Do you recommend those for coloring and shading the model?
I've used these before. I never thought about using for this until I took a clinic with Miles one time. But yeah, these are actual Minwax wood finish stains, so it's got an oil-based stain in it. I'm going to use this one to do the floorboards here once I assemble this. So that was my thinking, to use it for the floor. But I've done, I've used the Pantone markers like Miles said. I've used these also for doing wood structures. So they both come in very handy. I like these because they actually have wood finishes to them. So, this is golden oak, one of my favorite colors. So I like using fresh, nice wood with this. But if I can't get it, I want an old look, like Andy said, driftwood from Hunterline. So you can use all kinds of medium. There's no one particular medium that's right or wrong for doing this. So
yeah, just another scale. Maulers had a comment. Those stain pens release a fair bit of stain. Word of warning.
Yes, yeah. I did a test on the edge of the bench before I went ahead and did that.
Keep a rag handy and just wipe them down. They'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Well, I've never brush stained anything in my life. When I used to be an amateur furniture maker, I would always hand rub it. And I wish I could do something like this, but with hand rubbing.
CL Lines has a question. If you cut off the tabs, will that cause the doors and windows to move out of place and look funny? If you're talking about the tabs that are on the walls for connecting end walls to the front and back walls,
Right.
no.
But it's all about what size. So keep in mind that you're cutting the tabs, or I am, and not everybody does this, but I bought some higher end kits. Sorry, wrong camera. And I bought some higher end kits that they don't have the tabs on it, that use square construction. So I've cut the tabs off of this side. However, when you align these pieces, they're only off by the same amount as the square stock I'm going to use. So basically what I'm doing is just taking the tab off that wall and taking the recess off from the adjoining wall in the same way. And what I get is it's just smaller than that by, this little bit of tab is hanging out here, and it's just smaller than this piece of square stock that I'm going to use as the corner trim. What that does is recess the trim strip back into the wall. So on a structure, it depends on the style of structure, what the original structure is, and that's a good point. I'd like to show you something real quick that is influencing my model. I always recommend that you build from photos, and I'm building off from an approximate. So this is very similar to the structure we're building, slightly modified. I'm going to do similar techniques to build an approximation of it. However, if you notice the way this is built with these posts in the corner, it's basically a post style construction. That trim strip is not laying on the face of it necessarily, and you especially see that true on horizontal siding, like poplar siding or something like that. You'll see the poplar siding is run back to and cut into that trim. The trim strip's not laying on top of it. That's just a spot for water to get in. So that's why I really like cutting this trim strip back into the side of the structure. And I unabashedly stole that from a kid I bought that had that, and I was really fond of the results. So I started doing it on my wood structures and cutting the tabs off. And all I'm doing is I'll apply strip to one of these walls, glue it on, clamp it. Actually, I'll go ahead and show you how we do that. You just need to get the right size wood so that and set it back in the right amount so that it has a little bit of a reveal, actually. So in the real world, a carpenter would leave a slight bit of reveal or a point where you could caulk or paint to. You don't really like flush things in the real world as a carpenter very much because they don't stay flush, because wood doesn't stay exactly where it is. So this size of wood will let me put this in place, and I'm using the floor plate as my guide as well to reinforce that I stay to the correct size. And I'm gonna glue pieces of this on and clamp it to this. That's what I'll start on now to show you how to do that. There's not a great deal of complexity to it. I also overcut the thing, so all you have to do is you should always pre-stain wood too, depending on your glue. All this stuff is very relevant to the glue that you're using. But in my case, I really like wood glue, and if you get any wood glue on here, it will destroy its ability to soak in correctly. Now, for the paint, I'm going to paint after my super assembly. So I mean, I'm not going to put windows in it and all that jazz, but I'm going to do the assembly of the walls with some of these pieces, and then flat finish the walls with the trim strip on, and then we'll do the assembly after the paint. I often, on most structures, completely assemble the structure and then spray bomb it most of the time or airbrush it. But so a little bit of stain on that piece of wood, and then all I do, I prefer wood glue to about anything else with working with wood. I mean, and toothpicks or skewers are pretty handy. My favorite application for it. And if you've got any questions
Go for it.
It'll be a good time.
I'm ready. What do you want me to hang on to?
All righty, let's see. CSX Rail Line Productions, Miles question. What is the amount of pressure you are using to sand the pieces?
Really light. And do it several times. You're better off to do it several times lightly than to do it real hard and say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I must have sanded those walls on the Hero 3 or 4 times, and then stopped and looked at it, stopped and looked at it, stopped and looked at it until I got it where I really liked it.
And with most of these things, I have to say, and this might even apply to styrene kits as well, but with wood kits especially, it's really really easy to take off too much, and it's much harder to add back. So I will say, as we go forward with some of the wood, how it is, it can be repaired. Um, but unlike, plastic where you can fill it in and sand it down and, much like Bondo a car or something like that, that's not really the case with wood unless you are doing a complete paint coat. But if you're going to stain it and leave some of the natural wood finish, then it's easier to just work slow, take off a little bit, or the same thing with paint. Add a little bit of paint, just work your way through it one small step at a time.
Well, what I've done now here is I've got my two sides to the foundation glued in place. So I just put a little bit of glue in the one. I'm using a tight bond too, and I use a little micro brush to spread the glue around so I don't get it out on any of the surfaces. Like Andy said, you're using wood glue in this stuff. If you get it on a surface where you want to stain it, it won't work. So you have to go ahead and be cautious about that. But I'll just take one of the end pieces here, and I just need to put a little bit of glue on the three horizontal surfaces in the back side of the tab. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead.
I'll talk about glue application too, because I do it differently than you guys do, obviously, if anybody's watching.
Sure, well, yeah, that's what all about, different techniques.
We were born with fingers. And to me, you have a little more control. If I get a bunch on here, what I'll do is pinch my fingers together and pinch it back like this, wipe it, and that leaves it just a bead down the center. I think fingers give you a whole lot more control. That's also the reason that I pre-stain everything, because I just think you're going to have a lot less problems down the line if everything's pre-stained. If I get a little glue out now, it doesn't make a bit of difference.
Good point, Miles.
I haven't hurt my model.
I do see some consistency in your approach, Miles. He's finger painting and using markers, and that is just a testimony to Miles's child at heart philosophy. Although, as you can tell from his hero model, the results don't differ just because you're young at heart.
That's right.
Amen. That's pretty good, and I like that, Andy. You see through all
I've done so far is glue sides on. Generally, I'd clamp those and let them set up, but they'll set up fairly quick. You'd be surprised how quick the wood glue will set up since I'm using such small amounts. It'll set up.
Leads will set up in no time at all. It's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. The I-leads, that thicker viscosity glue or what have you, I like that much better. But I'm a fan of using that too. I fell in love with using wood glue recently, and I've got a bunch of wood structures that were built with CA originally, but I'm having to go back, and when I go back and touch those, I'm having to repair them every time I do it. So
yeah, the CA is not the best.
So, and I'm going to leave these pieces long. So I need to cut them to match the quarter piece where the quarter fits, because I've got to match the angle pitch of the roof when I assemble those that way. So, but when that happens, when that is complete, and I put a square stock on the inside, if that's even necessary, and I'm raced based on necessity. The way that the kit goes together, the size of the kit, larger kit require a lot more structure. It also depends on how much interior I'm going to do with it. And then this kit, as Barry was showing you, has this big floor in it that actually provides you some structural support. So wood kits vary a lot, but something you'll notice is I cut that trim strip off, cut the tabs off, and put that trim strip in. The kit ultimately stays the same size. It doesn't have to, and if I cut off a little more, it wouldn't have been a big deal. It wouldn't hurt my feelings to tear it the floor a little bit with a knife. But and I use an old Atlas track saw. I probably had it when I was like 8 or 9 years old, so I've had it at least 4 or 5 years. And
yeah, right.
Yeah. So, and it's at least 4 or 5 years of gray hair ago. So it ends up being the same size, but you get a different effect on the outside. With this, when it's complete, that trim strip is embedded into the wall structure. It provides structural support. It doesn't degrade the interior structure of the wall. And you get an outside corner where all the trim stripping is not on the surface, but flush. And even though this kit has the vertical board and batten style where it's not as critical, those trim strips won't affect the results of anybody's work for this particular kit. I really want to showcase using this technique, and I've went using this technique as standard because of how well it works on horizontal lap siding. I'm super fond of it in that case, and I wanted to show you do it. But you also get the added benefit of structural support of adding a 3/32 knock.
I got another question here. This is a general question from Aaron. What do you do when a wood kit arrives and there is warping?
I go into it expecting warping. They just do. Depends on the severity. Go ahead, boss. What you got?
Send it back.
You do have that if it's severe or if it's damaged, I would agree. But a little bit of minor warping, I go into it expecting that to be the case.
I used to have a friend that would wet the opposite. Well, okay. If it's blowing, stop and think. If you're in a humid climate, then it has too much water on the convex side. The caved in side is drier. So you can spray some water on that side and then put it in a microwave and nuke it. And
interesting, yeah.
you will dry it out then hopefully equally and take the warping out. Had a friend, Ken Dunn, that used to own Sheridan Products, made HON 3 pre-built car kits, and he was constantly throwing his car kits, his frames, into the microwave and straightening them that way.
I'll be darned. That's a good trick.
I had never thought of a microwave as a modeling tool. Now, I have to say, I do apply stains in that way to get that to affect the warping, and then bracing is your friend too. But the idea of sticking a microwave in here, and that's a very multi-use tool, a microwave now that you think about it. So, you can straighten walls and nuke a burrito. So
That's right. I always say that my blender that I bought at the fair, is my marriage saver blender because it keeps me from having to go up the kitchen and borrow friends all the time. But you also want a marriage saver microwave in your shop as well.
Yeah, good point, Miles. Good point.
a lot easier than my technique with the oven for my dirt, where I have to catch my wife gone shopping to be able to cook my dirt. So
Yeah, taking stuff up and nuking it sometimes will get you in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah.
Not that any of us has ever done that.
been in trouble? Of course not.
Heck no.
After all, your wife could watch this later, so you want to be careful what you admit to.
Better believe it.
Never admit it on the air, man.
That's right.
Never. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some white paint to my interior wall here because I plan to paint the interior all white and light it up and stuff. So.
Yeah, I vary back and forth. If I plan on illuminating the kit, I put white in them. A lot of times I've been putting black in them so I get better reflectivity on windows for some of the background kits. But the more we've talked about Arduinos, et cetera, the more I'm inclined to paint everything white and just plan on lighting everything. So
Yeah. Just give it a little whitewash look.
So I'm going to go ahead and paint a wall. And I can't say that I have perfected this technique. This is a new technique to me. I knew it was going to be different than anybody else's technique because I've done quite a few wood kits with varying techniques. This is a rubber cement application. I'm really fond of that effect. I've done it more than any other. My water towers I'm really fond of. However, I tried to do hairspray on I did some rubber cement on this one and it was too extreme for what I wanted. And then I come back, and this was not done. I'm still mid construction on it. And I tried to hairspray this kit, which is a fine technique for plastic. And I can't say that it doesn't work for wood, but it's not very effective. Let's just say that. It's not extremely effective. And you have to really lay the hairspray to it. This technique, on the other hand, and I'm just using just mineral spirits, and we're going to soak the wood. I also, my favorite paint materials are to work with are typically, I'm really fond of these Vallejo paints. Now that Polyscale's not around, who was my absolute favorite for a long time, I really like these Vallejos, although there is some adjustment to using them. I will paint the interior with this. I'll probably spray bomb it with a can of testers, honestly, but sometime later. But in this case, and I'm not fond of these paints for other than scenery work. For structures, I'm not fond of this paint. It's not a great paint. It has a particular. It's a depends on your application. But for wood structures, this does not typically work for me very well. However, in this case, it has a particular property. Some other paints do as well, like Tamiya. I don't have a good, readily available outlet for Tamiya where I am because I don't have a plastic modeling shop that's nearby. Although I do plan to get some Tamiya paints in the near future, start experimenting with them. However, this crappy apple barrel cheap paint has an effect where it basically enamels, or it basically creates a skid, and that allows layers of it to peel off from the, in this process. What I'm doing is mineral spirits to the walls, and then what that does is degrade the adhesion of the paint, or retard the adhesion of the paint. So the paint cannot adhere to the wall as effectively as it should, allow us to peel some of that off. And you want to work with this all wet. That's what makes this a tricky technique to work with, especially with wood. But if you go Google Chuck Doan, his work is, just other than human. It's unbelievable. It's some of the best stuff. Now, he's working at some larger scales, but it's absolutely incredible what he's able to do and how realistic it looks. So it's wet with mineral spirits. And what I've had the best luck, his direct extensions are to get it wet and then throw some paint on it. What I've had a little bit of luck with in my early test cases was using mineral spirits in the removal process too, peeling the tape off, putting mineral spirits on it again. That way I'm making sure the wood stays wet, so it's soaking through where I've already removed some of the paint. And we'll use clear Scotch tape to remove paint. So make sure it's a good wet surface. Let's get some paint out here.
That's where I'm not sure how it's going to work for me, since I'm using alcohol-based stains, including my top coat. So I'm going to try it by putting the driftwood down as my base coat of my walls, and then applying rubber cement, and then letting it dry, and then apply the top coat, and then see how it looks when I pick off the rubber cement.
Well, that's how I've done it with like most of my structures are the peeled paint effect, and it's done with just rubber cement, and that's a great effect. I use a pencil eraser, I think it is, to scrape at it.
Yeah. I bought like a gum art eraser to do it. So
fancy. But you want to make sure this is quite wet, because I've tried it on several times. I've tried it a bunch of different ways. I have to say I've not perfected this technique, but it was a unique enough effect. So the walls quite wet, water pooling in the pulling between the battens, and then apply the paint. And timing seems to be the most critical thing for this technique. I'm not a master at it, but timing seems to be the most critical thing about when to do the removal part of the process. How's everybody coming along?
I'm doing
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm just painting my concrete foundation while I'm letting the base set up here.
Oh,
So,
concrete, I already have those painted. There we
yeah.
I'd say that's one of
Yeah.
the. I'd say it's one of the single biggest factors when it comes to wood, and I'm kind of building like 3 or 4 kits at one time, most of the time, because there's wait time in there. There's processes. It's there a requirement of a little patience kind of seems
Yeah.
obligatory.
Well, I started thinking about it. I said, it'd be a good idea to let everybody see all the steps in the process. So rather than all of us do all this pre work, I'll show them pretty much a naked kit from the beginning, you know, and see how it all turns out, because you guys are obviously doing different techniques. So I can
And I was
incorporate my tech. What's that, Andy?
sorry, I was tempted to do a little bit more pre-building, and one thing I realized is that there's no way in 3 shows that we could finish all of it on screen. So we will inevitably have to do a little building off screen. But
Yeah.
my goal is just to show you what I'm going to do, and then between shows, I'll complete that step before I go on to the
Well,
to
yeah.
that next week, for next month. But in 3 shows to build a kit, which is essentially whatever 4.5 hours,
Yeah.
and even still downtime, and they're showing it and all that stuff. There's no way you could build a wood kit. You can build a wood kit in a half hour if you want to, but if you really want to do fine scale modeling, meticulous modeling where you're looking at a photo and at least using it for inspiration, if not more. And I'm going back to mine as I look at the way the paint has washed off on this. Miles made a great point about how weathering affects certain areas of the paint, especially under the soffit or the eaves, as it were, of
Right.
a building. But this batting has a certain effect as well, and it seems like the paint is not. Seems it's either they didn't apply it very well, uh, or it didn't hold up very well to the sides of the batting strips. So I'm trying to apply my paint not as effectively as I should to get a good finish. Because my goal is not to get a good finish. My goal is to get a finish that looks like the photo I have.
Yeah.
And that's why when are you modeling? If they just built this building, it ought to look pretty good. In my case, this building was, in 1950, this building was going to be torn down shortly. So it's got to be a little rough. So it's a wet surface. It's wet in every way. It's soaked down with the mineral spirits, and then it's wet paint. So I'm gonna give that a few minutes to set up, and then we'll come back to peeling that off.
Yeah, the biggest problem that I probably will face with the using the alcohol stain as the top coat is it doesn't skin like the acrylic paints do. So that's why I figured I have to get a good undercoat, then just put rubber cement where I don't want the top coat. And then when I pull the rubber cement off, it would just leave holes in the finish rather than like ripples in the finish like you can get with the skin if you pick at it on acrylic paint. I mean, I may not like the technique when I'm done, but we'll see.
When I've built, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 wood kits since I got back into the hobby recently, I don't know, maybe 20. And I've varied my technique on every one of them, but I found things that were perfect, and I've mix and match techniques from one to the other.
All right, we got a comment here from William Rogers. Is it a good idea to hit the wood kits with a spray varnish sealer before painting to prevent warping?
Sure, absolutely. If that
Anyone?
matches your painting technique, that's really the key. Is I wanted to be able to show wood through. Miles mentioned a technique that I use a lot. It's basically using sanding as a weathering technique. I do that quite a bit, and I will sand this after it's all finished in certain areas to get wear effect at the foot of doors where people are rubbing running in and knocking mud off their feet. Since this is a railroad section house, sanding is a good weathering technique. That's so That works. It depends on what your top coat's going to be, whether a sanding sealer is better or a spray sealer is better, or these alcohol-based stains like be a berry or
All
you.
right, AJ's got a good one here. All of you are doing a rather direct painting, staining of the wood. What about using an airbrush to do this?
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, yeah,
Up
it's
to
just
how to
like
use it.
that. Yeah, a lot of people do that, and you can certainly do that. It all depends upon what you want. I prefer to do some of these techniques because it's more like a natural wood finish, but you could certainly, if they're going to be a painted finish, airbrush would work just as nicely. And you can certainly spray it probably with an acrylic, and that way you could do multi coats of paint and do the hairspray technique or whatever to introduce your weathering, and your paint peeling. So yeah, there's no reason you couldn't do that.
If I was using the Vallejo, I would spray it,
Yeah.
but I needed this skin effect. And when you degrade the paint or when you thin this kind of cheap paint out, I haven't had the best. It sprays okay, but I haven't been able to produce a skin effect when I spray it or
Well,
when I
that's the
thin it.
problem is by thinning it out, you're thinning out the binding agents in the paint. What did you use to thin it with?
Windex most of the time, or actually, I buy a
Yeah,
gallon of window washer fluid, non-winter class, because you don't want the antifreeze.
yeah. That typically is what a lot of people use for thinning acrylics, and usually it works pretty good. But since you are thinning the binding agent, you're
Yep.
thinning how the skin's effect's going to work on it too.
So the weathering effect is the biggest controlling factor. The painting effect is the biggest controlling factor. That affects your glues. That affects your, you know, how you can apply it.
I was going to say, if you're going to stain, you don't want to seal it first because then your stain won't take.
No,
If you're going to
exactly.
if you're going to paint the building, then yes, seal it. You need to seal it on both sides. That's why I have black on black or stain on in white, because otherwise that wall will warp. Even though I didn't put an interior in that HO building, I still sealed the insides of those walls so they would not warp later on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Miles, right. What causes warpage is uneven absorption
Uneven
of
water.
moisture.
That's
Yeah,
right.
so if you don't, if it's not sealed equally on both sides by whatever means, then moisture can cause one side to expand different from the other, and that's how you get warpage.
That's right.
So,
Andy, when you get half that wall done, hold it up to the camera so everybody can see the difference after you get about half of it done.
okay. So yeah. So what I'll do, and I have to be careful with it because the battens are still fresh with glue. But I'll start, and that's what is a little bit difficult about this. And I have not done this technique with battens, so I got to get this down in there. And what I think I'll do.
So what I have here, folks, is all my concrete footers are now painted on my base. So the subfloor and the center wall now glues on top of this.
All right, CL has got something for you, Andy.
You're laughing an awful lot, so you make me nervous. All right, go ahead with it. What do you got, Curtis?
Andy, can you do that paint step over again, but with a different color? Then again with even a different color? So when you go to peel it off, you will see more than one color?
Oh, layers of paint. That's interesting. If you let them set up, the only consequence I would say with paint with that is that I don't know that the mineral spirits would be able to degrade the adhesive properties. I think you could do that possibly with hairspray. Tell you what, that's a good experiment. I'd like to know if you could do it with multiple layers.
So when you get it done, Curtis, let him know.
That's right. In my case, all these structures were white, and they peeled this paint off, or they didn't peel the paint off on purpose, but as the paint peels off, it's exposing wood. But there is a quite common effect, of course, of these buildings that were painted various colors, especially residential structures, etc. Whereas in my case, the Norfolk and Western Railroad, they painted everything white, and all they did is just keep painting the thing white as it wore out. So until they quit painting the things, until they fell down.
One thing that I found out in making the the Hero one that we've been turning around is that there is a problem with the construction.
Is there?
He made for me anyway, he made these battens so that they are equal. It doesn't make any difference which side you put on which way, they'll fit. But these tabs, for me, because I skinned over my roof with just a single layer of nose blowing tissue. This is 2 layers, but yeah, I separated them anyway, if I can get them to go. There we go. Well, separate those down so they were only 1 layer of thickness, and they will show that dimple where this comes through. So what I'm doing right now is I pulled out my wall repair compound, my trusty putty knife, and you want to fill that in now. I was doing it after I already had the roof on there, which made for some interesting weathering, but it also made for me reverting back to my younger years when I was in the Air Force, and I used some rather colorful language to describe problems of this nature.
Does that have anything to do with snafu?
Yeah, something like that. I did not realize that this was going to be such a problem and cause such an uneven surface on my roof underneath that tissue. So best thing to do is, if you're going to put on something fairly thin, now Andy was talking about using some metal roofing or something like that. If you're going to do that, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you're going to use the tissue, which I really like on buildings like this, they would have used something awfully cheap. Railroads didn't have much money. If you're going to put on some tar paper roof or whatever, unless you're using a fairly thick tar paper, you're going to want to fill these holes in.
And I don't like the cardstock they see it with the kit. Johnny, there's over to, I haven't done this side over here. Keep in mind, I don't want an even paint along the edge of the battens. So, but you can see this peel paint effect if it's between the battens. And I'm leaving a lot of the paint toward the top. Just like Miles said, that's a really important factor. But especially along that outside edge, you can see it much easier along this outside rib. You can see that peeled paint effect. And what I find with this technique, what experimentation I've done with it, is it comes off in pieces, in chips, kind of. Whereas with some of the other techniques I've done, like hairspray, you kind of have to shape those chips, by your peeling process. But
Andy,
sir,
my question is, all right, you got to do the peel and paint effect. I think I would have painted that wall, done the peel and paint effect on it, let it dry up good, and then put the battens on and do a peel and paint effect on them.
I thought about that. It's hard to tell from the paint from the picture, honestly, but
it just make it easier, get in between the battens.
Oh yeah, that's proving to be quite difficult, and this is going to be hard to show. But let me screen share to show you what I'm modeling from. So, reason I thought about that, honestly, I did. But if you look here, let's get down here. If you look at, that's pictures. You know, they didn't have these high megapixel digital cameras back then, so what we got to work with is a little less perfect. But it seems like what I'm trying to see from the paint effect seems like that the edges of the battens, which they're casting a shadow, but it looks like the edges of the battens are not perfect. You see, you know, down here there's war edges on the battens, etc., especially on the board. But it looks like the paint is damaged in the center.
Yeah.
Of course, that's just me at a you know crappy picture from the 30s, so that's hard to tell. So I wasn't as concerned, but I did think about doing it that way.
Hey. I don't know if any of my OSCA buddies are catching on to what I'm doing here, but I found that these rafter pieces that they've cut are a little wide.
Oh, are
They
they?
wouldn't let my roof drop down, so I've been coming in here. Oh, it's still off. What I've been doing is coming here and cutting on this edge and bringing it back in so that it's less width, because it really doesn't seem to like being out there at full width.
But especially if you want to leave the roof removable, which I do, so I don't want it to be too snug because I want to be able to take it out without damaging it.
Yeah, I had no trouble on the HO version, but this one, for some reason or other, seemed to be awfully tight. It's not bad.
I'm starting to put my base coat of driftwood on the walls now with the battens attached. So then once this is dry, then I can apply my rubber cement and then see how that technique works with the alcohol stains.
So you've got your base stain. Are you going to put the rubber cement that's stained over top?
Yeah, I'm going to put rubber cement and let it dry. And then, or I'll put the, after this dries, I'll put the rubber cement on, let that dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with just a top coat of the red, or I might use red or blue. I'm not sure what color I'm going to paint the building. And then I'll try to see how it looks when I lift off the rubber cement, see what it comes out like.
Well, that's interesting. I've always done it with stain underneath, and then put the rubber cement on and then paint over. That's awesome. I'm really interested to see how that plays too.
Yeah, I've decided to give this a try. I've never done it either, so.
No, but I really like the stains, that diversity of colors they have. I'm a super fan.
Say that stain you're using, Barry, is driftwood.
Yes, it's called driftwood. It makes a great weathered wood look.
That's my favorite too. That's what I'm using is the driftwood as well. It's just absolutely perfect in this, especially if you're going to paint over top. If you were going to use if it was going to be just straight exposed wood, maybe not. But that was what I just slapped it on real quick. But yeah. I also like Miles's point that it's good to not apply it evenly because they don't weather evenly. I often apply it fairly heavy under windows and such where the windows tend to leak in the sash.
The one nice thing with the alcohol stains too, if you hit both sides, see it's very little warpage in the wall, just a little bit in the end there, and because there's not a lot of moisture content that hangs in the wood, like acrylic stain will make a wood really warp. I mean, acrylic paints, because it's a large water content. And another good way to do it is to keep it in the frame, and then before you cut it out, then go ahead. This piece fell out as it would have. This helps keep it from bowing as well, because I can put down the bottom here. The battens are now adhered to the frame on the bottom, So that'll help keep some pressure to keep it from warping. This one has stayed pretty flat, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it underneath of my X-Acto box there to keep it flat while I paint the other sides.
Yeah, I tend to go ahead and leave them kind of in the sprues when I stain them too, although they tend to break out. But
Yeah, sometimes they do, yeah.
the back side of this structure, I'm not going to focus as much. I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and assemble it. Since the paint technique, especially since you're working so wet, there's just no good way to do that and complete it on camera. So I'll probably use I may use the same technique, or I may use a different technique on the back.
Yeah, what I figure I'll do is I'll do this here in the next show. I'll do one wall with put the top coat on and peeling off the rubber cement, and then I'll have the other walls complete by then. So.
Oh yeah.
Tony Marino's got a question up here. What do you use if you want that rusted clapboard siding natural look?
These stains, they've got kind of an orangey rusty. They got, like I said, about 30 different colors, so you could strictly just stain it. Although I would kind of use a small brush so that it goes on even, less evenly.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
There's also a really nice orange titanium rust color that's an oil paint that you can mix up with turpentine and just apply that with a brush as a wash to areas. And then it makes incredible looking rust.
Oh, yeah. I use that for nail holes. Actually, I've got a little squeeze bottle that has a needle on the end of it, and I've got a mix of that, and I'll poke a hole with that thing and then kind of squeeze it, and it looks like it's coming out of the nail hole, although the nail hole's oversized for most, typical.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, realistically, with nail holes, the rusting is going to be very dark. It's not going to be as orange as you might think, Tony. There we go. All right, that one's staying pretty flat too.
But there's some really nice colors, like that red color, like what I'm assuming you're using, which is an exceptional barn
red. Yeah. But I also have, it's not out. I'm debating, because I was debating and using the royal blue.
Oh, that'd be nice too.
But they have another one. They have another one called PT Green, which looks like the green funk on pressure treated wood.
Oh yeah.
Well, y'all have been corrected by the professor.
Mr. Kleiser?
Yes.
What does he have for? I always welcome his opinion.
Well, Tony was talking about rustic clapboard siding, and y'all started into nail rusting. So Professor goes, guys, rustic, not rusty.
Okay.
Indeed.
Yes, I totally missed that one too. You're right.
Yeah, Professor also said for clapboard, Google Laurie Green peeling paint.
Oh, Laurie Green, yeah. He's got some impressive stuff.
I flipped up my other camera here to show you the close-up on some of this. I was trying to show the wood, and this is the door that I'm getting in windows. I'm getting ready to trim out. But this is done with marker, and I really like it because it allows the color or the texture of the wood to come through.
Yeah.
Hope that's focusing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at any rate, if I come back to here, I really like the one that was on the darker. Now this is a fabric marker. This one's an Expo rub-off marker. They don't rub off once you put them on wood. They're going to stain that wood.
Ah, okay.
I mean, it goes into the wood, so it's not going to come off. But and this fabric marker is made to staining the fabric, so it's not going to come off either. But it's really nice because now what I want to do is I want to paint that door. A painter would come up the rail, up here, and then my cross members would be stiles. Somebody probably correct me if I do it wrong, but I want to paint across that. And I really want to put my color on exactly like what a painter would do.
That's a good idea, Miles.
And if there's any stroking that looks incorrect in the end, it will be corrected by the fact that I painted it like a real painter. So,
Good point.
and I do come back, I probably should have sanded these edges. I don't like burnt edges on laser kits, but I sanded the ones on the HO kit on the edges to get that black off, but probably ought to do these as well. Makes it a whole lot easier if you do it here in the, don't take them out of the sprue pieces.
No question. If you're painting, that's not that big a deal, but if you're exposing stain, I have to take those edges off too.
Yeah. I'm gonna stain the fronts first and then come back and sand those edges, and I'll stain the edges, but make them green instead of that black.
Well, you know what? When Tony was mentioning rustic look, right?
Yeah.
The little, I think I can get to it, but the little expo, the module we built, Miles.
Uh-huh.
What I did with the wood shed we did on there is I colored it with this golden oak, but I
Yep.
used a driftwood gray over top,
Okay.
and just as a wash, and it toned it all down and made it look really nice and rustic and weathered up.
I've used this over top of paint, like I was talking about earlier, under windows quite a bit, where they tend to get kind of rough on paint on buildings that don't get painted often enough. And I've used it. You just got to be careful because it doesn't blend in very well. Whereas with powders, now if you do a complete wash over the whole thing, that works just fine. But
Yeah.
if you spot wash it, keep in mind it's going to have a tendency to look like a wet spot. So you got to be real gentle with it.
Yeah.
What's that, Johnny? We're
So
already
we're-
gone an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I was having so much fun. Okay, see you guys later. No.
Running off and leaving us. I will tell you that marker technique is incredibly quick. There's no
Yeah.
question about that
So,
technique. The paint
gentlemen, I'll be right back because I have to go grab my laptop's power supply. So,
the painting techniques that I'm using and that Barry's using are just not nearly as quick. So I've moved on to working with my base. I'll have that semi-complete, and then we'll take a look at the basic construction techniques and return back to a slight conversation about bracing before we go on, or before we go on to the next show next month.
I tell you, I really like that marker because it just, whoops, get it back on the camera there. It really leaves the grain. Well, come on there, Kim. It really leaves the grain showing, and yeah, it's still, that's an O-scale door leaning up to get the HO building, but you get the idea.
No, I have to say, I'm a complete fanboy, especially of your that oil-based crayon you used.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I'm a complete fanboy of that. That has an effect like no other. It doesn't look like peeling paint. It looks like a little bit of paint is left hanging on for dear life.
Yes.
I got a comment here. The Redneck Railroader. Is it more difficult to get the windows to glue up on wood than plastic?
No, I don't think so. But I use the same glue. I think it's about the same way. Now you'll see when we get into probably the third show, the last show for this structure. or maybe if we finish it up in the next one, that depending on what you're using. So the acetate, in my experience, I'm not, and a lot of people have this problem. I'm not real good at working with acetate with plastic cements. They frost it, or super glues frost it, and plastic cements damage it in a few ways and warp it. I like that Aleene's tacky glue. So,
Well,
but
these windows have that adhesive on the back of them. You just peel and stick. And I really think the adhesive that he's using, whatever it is, really does hold. It's done a great job on these. I can turn this one and show you on the HO one, but they did a great job of holding up.
It does seem to be more stout than a lot of the. I've had a lot of stick that I just didn't. I haven't had the best luck with the peel and stick adhesives. I've had several of them come loose, so I've got to where I don't spray them with an adhesive anymore. But these that he's using are really tough.
You just wasn't holding your mouth right, Andy.
Yeah, our left leg wasn't up on the ground. But I'm gonna, as you'll see when we get to the windows in the next or the third show, I'm gonna try. I've got some microscope tiles. Actually, I've got some cover tiles that are even thinner. But I ordered some from Sierra Model Works, or Sierra Scale Models. Sorry, they have some glass material that is a real glass material and a little small pencil cutter, and it's real fine, so it's easy to cut. Or easy to cut yourself on. But I'm going to use real glass since this structure is so close to the edge of my layout. There's one of the rare places where a track is about 2 inches from the edge of the layout, and then this structure is just on the other side of that track, so it's real front and center. It's a good opportunity to use real glass.
I made it back. My computer went to sleep on me because the battery is getting low. But
I should warn you guys doing the HO version too. I had trouble with this center wall that goes between the two halves.
Yeah.
These tabs were a little bit too thick. The actual wood itself was too thick to go into the cut slabs, and I actually had to sand these back a little bit on an angle to get them to wedge down. So be careful.
Yeah, mine went in okay on mine. It came with.
I see that happen a lot though with the wood structures. Is the parts just vary slightly in size? It's not, but I see it with plastic too. They're not perfect, but.
Well, with wood you have moisture swelling too, so.
Yeah, it could be just a moisture swell.
All right. So I'm at the point where I'm letting my pieces here dry. So I got a little weight down on all of them to keep them from warping any, and the warpage is at a minimum, so they should be nice and straight when I'm done.
Miles, can you tell us about your clamping and bracing techniques? What do you feel about the side braces? And then I'll talk briefly about what I'm doing with some of the braces.
I took my building and built the foundation and set it aside for a couple of minutes. I had a little weight on it, but basically I've used the base to hold my building square. Yeah, I'm on the camera. And then I put a whole bunch of rubber bands, and I had a little bit of trouble here with the base, so I squeezed it, but I just put a bunch of rubber bands on there. By tomorrow, when I come down here to go to work on this thing, it'll be pretty well glued up and solid. Doesn't take much to solidify it.
I do what I do on a lot of mine is run a strip, but this one I'm considering what I'm going to do as I final assembly, which we're not going to get to. I'll put stripping along the inside edge of these structures, and I'll step it up inside the building about the same as the square stock, and then I'll put a little square down on finished scenery so that the structure sits on top of it, like where I can see it here, where this signal tower goes. I've put this square stock of material. Most of you guys have seen my sectional road bed technique. I put that square stock, and then this piece, the structure sets just over top of that, so it sets squarely. I put this in and seating right up to the edge of this material and everything, so the scenery is under the edge of the wall. And then you have a structure that, can't easily be knocked around by simple vibrations.
There
So
you
you
go.
get support and you get this, and that's, it fixed with the scenery technique, so it's on there.
Hey, Andy,
Sir.
your building's not together yet.
No, not yet. Not completely.
And mine's in no way, shape, or form together. But you know what? We're actually showing everybody all the different stages of construction here. So
Well, I just think that shows the advantage of O scale. Mine's all together. That's because mine's big enough to be seen.
I like the advantage of O scale argument. You got a little time on us, and the paint technique is the critical thing about expedience. This regular paint, I can't touch this wall or mess with this wall, and I need to paint my walls while they're loose walls. So I get to a point where I can't easily carry on. Even I've got a second structure, but I'm in between shows. I'm going to cut these two structures and somewhat put them together, because if you remember the picture that I showed you, that structure is slightly longer with a window on the end. So I'm going to chop them together a little bit between shows to show the basic construction. But
Well, in actuality, I'm at the same point, because I can't really go on until this filler that I put on top dries. I can't put my roof on. I'd really like the body to dry as it's rubber banded here together before I start putting the window sills and door sills and the trim on. So I'd have to take all the rubber bands off to do that. So I'll wait also probably till the next show and stick those on.
I still think you squarely beat us. If this was a finish line race, I still think you squarely beat us.
Well, I had all my parts already pre-painted, so that gave me a big advantage.
And even pre-stating the paint, the paint I put over top,
I've got a question here for Miles from North Star Railroad Lines, which is Dwight. I see no bracing in the corners on Miles' building. Reason?
Well, when I did the HO one, here I can pick it up also, and I'll put it on the overhead camera. There's no bracing on this one as well. First of all, it's glued all the way around the base here, so the walls are attached to the base. The side wall, or the center wall here, it's glued there, which holds its width. And then when I put the braces in, the way these braces are made, they actually drop down inside of that wall. So putting a brace along the top edge here would interfere actually with the rib bracing that he's given you for the roof. As a matter of fact, I had a heck of a time. I don't know if you can see it here or not. See these notches in my paper shades? That's to allow this roof bracing to drop down. They were actually curling that shade, hitting it.
Oh, wow.
Other side, I made sure my braces for my doors were way down. So it's a real consideration to watch out what kind of bracing you put along the top here if you're going to do it. I didn't find it was necessary. First of all, this building is only 4 inches long. It has a brace every 2. Seems to be plenty for what it does. It's also sealed. I did cheat. One thing I didn't talk about, do it real quick before we wrap up. I took my crazy glue, and what I do is I take a little square of, I've shown this to Andy and some others on occasion. Take a little Walmart sack and I cut it up into squares. I take a little bit of tissue or something and I wad that around and then rubber band it so that I get what amounts to what a furniture maker would call a French polishing cloth. Then you take the crazy glue and I simply smeared it all over inside here. And then I took this little guy and I smeared that glue everywhere in here. So that when I got done gluing this top on, I now have this roof totally sealed. First of all, it's as solid as a brick. You could throw anything on it and it's not going to do anything. And it's also not going to work. I learned that from a professional model maker down in San Antonio, Mr. Sanchez. And Mr. Sanchez actually made models for the Smithsonian Institute.
Oh,
if you go there to the Aerospace Museum, you'll see about 30 of his airplane models, and they have seat belts in 1/4-inch scale. The guy is a phenomenal builder. And what he would do was take that crazy glue and smear it all over his balsa wood rings. He needed no paper coating or anything else. He actually made a fiberglass coating because that glue bonds to the wood and it becomes really hard. I've used it on a lot of wood models because you can then come back and sand that wood. It's so hard that you really have to work at it to get it smoothed back out. But it seals that wood and keeps it from taking in any moisture. It really keeps it steady.
I have a question there, Miles. If you put that on the inside of your roof, does that cause the wood to warp any from the
No,
glue?
because then I coated this outside totally with glue, probably 2 or 3 coats as I put on my tissue. So this first of all, I don't agree with doing cardboard, which is the HO. I have an advantage on the O gauge. It's a wood roof.
Yeah.
I don't like cardboard anytime for a roof. I will almost always, I keep pieces of 60,000 styrene just stuck around here, scrap pieces from signage that a guy gave me. Right. And I make almost all my roofs out of 60,000 styrene. If I was an HO, I'd do it 30,000s. But nonetheless, this was not bad because I knew I could seal it and I wanted to do it with the kit.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show everybody the technique for sealing with crazy glue. But.
All right, right after Dwight's question, CSX Rail Line Productions, his answer to you, no bracing, because Miles is talented. LOL.
No, I just took a look at the kit and made sure that I had enough support there before. I did take a look at that because I was kind of worried about the thing moving. But
Yet I tend to brace them like they're going to survive war. So, I've got the bottom of it braced around the edge, set up inside so it'll set on top. This has the 16th, but now this only has I think a 16th inch square stock for this tree, which is not very stout. But then I went down the inside quarters too, but I don't know. I don't like them to work very much. So,
well, here's a good tip we can pass on to everybody. You want some cheap plastic material for making like roofs and stuff? For sale signs from Walmart. Cost you like $1.
That's the thick one too. The one
that's the heavy duty one.
Yeah. That's what I think I'm going to use as well, because wood side of that roof, if you remember that picture I showed you, wood side is corrugated steel roofing. The new side, the left side of it, just has the windows stuff. The side I've got to extend is roll roofing. So I'm going to have to put a piece of styrene on that side. But on the right side, I was thinking about running the 16th inch square stock across it and gluing the metal to it, not with a wood undercoat, because I like Miles, do not like this cardboard roofing material at all.
Yeah, I'm not totally sold on that myself.
One thing I would like to add to, Gil Freitag's a hero of mine. He's down in Houston, Texas. He's been a champion, first place winning, gold award winning NMRA modeler for a long time. But he did a clinic one time and he talked about you always want to finish all 4 sides of the building. If you're a younger modeler and you say, well, I'm going to put this on my railroad and this is the only side that's going to show, I don't need to finish the back. I've had people put cardboard on the back of it. Invariably, I mean, I'm kind of the oddball because I've lived in like 20 states in the first, 24 years that Fran and I were married. But so we moved a lot. But you never know where this is going to go on another railroad of yours as you move around. So finish all 4 sides of the building. Don't sell your building short and just build one side.
Absolutely. I'm eventually going to work at figuring out what I can do for some interior furniture in these things too. So,
I want to be able to. I'm not worried about the little bit you'd see through a window. I'm gonna put blinds over it, but I think I'll leave one door open and put that fella standing in there with his hat on, with his fedora on, like he had. So I do want to put Vector Cut, and there's another company actually that I can't remember right now that has these wood roll top desks. Laser cut wood roll top desks.
Banta has those.
Pardon me?
Banta has those.
Beta. I really like their stuff too. I've got a gas station for Beta. I like their part. They're good kits too. And especially I like Beta because they do the variety of scales that they do.
I'm actually going to try and see if I can get some measurements on like a plain, ordinary wooden chair, maybe a 4-leg table, and like a bunk bed, and try and make them on my Cricut out of some material. I don't know what yet.
That's
Just
cool.
play around, so I can cut it flat, score it, fold it, and glue it together. Just put it in there, and it's enough for you to see through the windows. I mean, it wouldn't, if you took the roof off, it wouldn't look like a beautiful craftsman model inside, but it gives you the illusion through the windows.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to keep going, guys? This is an hour and 40 minutes or so. Maybe we
I think we've got to a logical stopping point. This is one of the things you have to accept with the wood structure is that you're going to work for a while and then you're going to leave it and work on something else while glues and paints and other things set up. Yep. And then we'll be back next month with the same cast of characters to see how much closer to a complete structure we can bring this thing.
And characters we are.
Indeed.
I played innocent.
Oh, Miles, you're the biggest character we have.
You can plead all you want to, but nobody buys it.
Yeah, so long as I get enough Dr. Pepper, I'll be fine.
That's when you got that. I'm going for the big size. Going for the Diet Pepsi.
Chocolate milk is always close by me. So we really appreciate everybody joining us who did. I hope to see some people building some structures, some wood structures, this kit or other kits. We'd love to see your work posted in the G Plus community. Love to take some inspiration from you as well, what you've done that we've done, what worked, what didn't. We'd like to establish some communication about this and see you guys on the regular hangouts that we have that happen nearly every night so that we can work through this and expose you guys that are very comfortable with plastic structures but have been afraid to take on some of the wood structures.
I'm with you on that, Andy. And don't forget, we also have several great communities in Facebook as well for those who don't do Google Plus. There's YouTube Model Builders on Facebook. There's YouTube Model Railroaders that's run by Derek Glass. And then Gino has his channel. Troy has his channel, Model Railroad Help and Share. And there's, a few other great groups.
University.
Yes, Model Railroad University, absolutely. Do not forget that. I think we got to get us a Google Plus, community going with that too, Miles. We'll have to work on that.
And we'll be following up with. I'd like to. I'm going to take some pictures of what I've done, get some pictures of this feed to put, and some documentation for you guys as the next edition of the eBag is going to have. It's going to largely focus on fine scale in various ways, and we'll have a slight synopsis with some more details and written descriptions, parts lists, and paint techniques written out a little bit in brief, more of a photo collage coming up in the eBag. And there'll be a lot more fine scale related topics in the eBag and in our future shows going forward. Of course, please have the feedback.
And don't forget, in the next tech show, we're going to be not only introduce a little bit of the simple LED lighting for the building. We're going to take what we talked about prior in the pickaxe, and we're going to show you how to program a pickaxe to control, say, 4 LEDs in a building, maybe 5, and that way we can turn on and off the different room lights in sequence and make it look like the building is lived in. So add a little light animation to the building models. And if I can find my gooseneck light kit, I'll make sure I have one to put on this building when I'm done with it as well.
Really?
Oh, gentlemen, like Andy said, I want to thank everybody for participating tonight and watching us start down this new adventure we're doing here. So hope everybody enjoyed, and looking forward to having these back next month.
I appreciate the show. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and bring this one on into a close now.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
All right, we appreciate everybody coming in tonight and participating in the show and asking questions. I want to remind everybody to go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can find the schedules for the Tuesday show, the Wednesday show, and the Saturday live show. The Tuesday and Wednesday shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. Thursday and Saturday live show are 9 o'clock Eastern, and Central, and 10 o'clock Eastern time. And also be sure while you're there at the website, sign up for the e-magazine so you'll be notified when it comes out. JD and his crew do a great job on that. And there is an archive for the e-mag, so if you're new, you can go back to the very first issue and get yourself caught up on that. They put a lot of hard work into it. It's a free magazine, no advertising, it's all content, and it's done by the people in the community. So it's for the people and by the people. So go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. Check your schedules and sign up for the e-mag. Appreciate y'all coming in tonight. And we shall see you the next show. We have a February the 15th to be the Arduino workshop. That'll be our next show. Y'all have a good night and a good weekend. And we shall see you later.
Take care, everyone.